All right. Well, John, good to see you again.
Yeah.
It's been a long week without you.
Uh,
Um, Hopefully you're well. I know. So I mentioned bringing up the '80s, and I think we're specifically like we can talk about like how people dress and fashion, but I think we're all going to be wrong because I think when I look back to like '80s parties in college, we were pretty much all dressing like '90s, like it was like actually '90s stuff, and we don't really know. Um, but I brought it up because I think that for some reason that decade just has a lot of power to it. It was I know that I was hooked on it through the '90s. 2000s I think was more about the '90s than anything, and then like what's happening currently. But today, like the next generation, like Generation Z, the Zoomers, the Zennials, they seem to be really into it too. Like they seem to on like TikTok. I'm on there. I'm having fun on the app, and it seems like there's a large portion of them that are still bringing back like the video shooting styles, the dress, the music, the movies. Um, and I just kind of wanted to go back and talk about it because I think that pop culture from the '80s just has a ton of power to it, and it has a lot of pull. I don't know if it still has a lot of pull in your life, but yeah, I think it was just kind of a really cool, weird. It's probably the weirdest decade that we've had, I think, and maybe it was drug fueled, maybe it was I don't know what it was, but it was just like super weird and creative, and I think that it's just for some reason nostalgic across people that multiple generations of people that didn't even live in the '80s. Like
right.
what we were like 5, 6 when the '80s
Yeah.
began.
Right. Yeah. I don't know, man. It was just, it was a decade where I feel like people were not afraid to be corny, and
Yeah,
they were trying like new things. And sometimes like there was things in the 80s, I feel like that were corny, like for the sake of being corny and just being different.
right.
um as far as like like back in the day before the 80s, it felt like movies and music and pop culture and all that kind of stuff, there was always like very serious. There was always some very serious statements. I mean, aside from like hippies and stuff, a lot of that stuff was like psychedelic or whatnot. But then
Hmm.
like you got to the 80s and people were just trying to be different for the sake of it. You know what I mean? And I think that's like endured um, until now because, it's people all try to be original. So
Right.
you see like rock bands were dressing in drag, and
Yeah.
that was like the hot thing. And like women were like fawning over these dudes that were dressed up like women. And there was like
Yeah.
groups like Devo that were they were wearing like terrorist hats that looked like really weird. And it was just for
Yeah.
the sake of being weird. I mean, I don't know. That's how I interpreted it anyway, is just like that was the first decade in which people were being original for its own sake, if that
Right.
makes sense.
No, absolutely. And I think that so like thinking about the '60s and '70s, for some reason, like so I see the '80s as like our teenager rebellion generation, because there was like angsty movies, things like that. Like '90s got into grunge and like other stuff, but it was almost like a rebellion generation in that like obviously there was a lot of stuff going on in the '50s, '40s, '50s, '60s, a lot of people trying for social change. '70s seemed like just stereotypically looking back at it seemed like it was more uh, a decade of just kind of like extravagance. People tried to be like discos, still like glamour, a lot of that stuff. And then the '80s were just kind of like it was almost like we did a decade of like, well, we didn't really have much to do, so like people just started trying to be creative and tried to be different and trying to go against, just like make different new things.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that kind of shined through a little bit. For some reason, yeah, it's like the most nostalgic decade that we have, because like then like I don't know, 90s was a lot of stuff happening like with like current events and news. Like obviously a lot happened in the 90s, and then you get into the 2000s, you get into 9/11, then you get into war, then you get into all this other stuff that we're worried about, that like kind of took a lot of our attention. The 80s seemed like it was the last like kind of innocent decade until a lot of it started hitting the proverbial fan. um and it was kind of like a time when like yeah, when pop culture, movies, music, capitalism like all kind of had its heyday, where it was just all about let's pump out hits, let's pump out music, let's pump out movies, let's pump out all that stuff. But like I'm gonna run down a little list of so like I've obviously there's hundreds of lists of top movies or top music or top whatever,
Hmm.
and whoever, you know, no one's really right, but I'm gonna run down a list, and this is a super nostalgic list of movies for me, and I think for a lot of people. But Back to the Future,
Yeah,
Raiders
that's
of
the
the Lost.
first one that I was thinking of for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, that maybe is the most '80s movie. Well, I don't know. The Breakfast Club, Back to the Future, The Breakfast Club, Raiders of the Lost Ark, The
Right,
Terminator, Die Hard, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, E.T., Blade Runner, uh, The Shining,
right.
um, Revenge of the Nerds. I That's why I kind of like, oh, this movie too.
Revenge of the
It
Nerds.
wasn't on the list, but I just kind of like remembered
Yeah.
it. Aliens and Ghostbusters. So yeah,
Revenge of the Nerds. Do you think the '80s to me feels like it was like peak bullying time too?
yeah,
You
yeah.
know, like every movie had some hole in it that was the bully.
Hmm.
You know, every single one, even you know, cop movies and stuff. There was always like the crooked whole cop that's, you know, working behind the scenes with the bad guys, and he's always just like the it seems like in the '80s movies the bullies too were always just like way more cruel, like almost. That's why I say like the '80s, I feel like it was like almost intentionally bad on purpose, because like you would have bullies that were like unbelievably like they would have like weird like catchphrases and stuff, and you know, in movies. And I think that's part of like the fascination too with like the new generation in the '80s is like it's kind of ironic, you know what
Yeah,
I mean? If you look back at like the Cars, like they're not like they look cool for the sake of the fact that they're like boxy and like kind of in between old school stuff and new school stuff. But like, you know, you look at like a Chevy Corvette and you're going through like the progression of Corvettes, like they all look pretty cool. Then you get to the '80s and it looks kind of lame. And then like '90s and on, it looks cool. But that's like it's almost like the lameness of some of the stuff, like where they were trying new things, is like an irony thing for like the new generation and they like it. You know what I mean?
sure, sure. Like they had to break from the norm of like yeah, like Mustangs went through that progression too. Like the muscle
Right.
car, the Corvette, the muscle car. Like they had to break away from the tradition of whatever came before them.
Yeah, they look like literally they look like exactly what they are, honestly. Like if
Right,
somebody from the past tried to make something look futuristic and but they just weren't to the point where they could actually do that yet. You know what I
right,
mean?
right. Yeah, and I think it was they were obsessed with the future, because that's when they thought like yeah, they were obsessed with the future. But like two things, I think the decade where the nerds took over,
Yeah.
where like technology and everything started seeing its expansion. So like the nerds had more money to create more things,
Hmm.
but and also the decade of the unlikely hero, which Revenge of the Nerds was the nerds, and like Die Hard was this like beaten up retired cop, like tired whatever, and he takes down this sophisticated terrorist cell in
Mhm.
in a building. But yeah, so I think like Decade of the Unlikely Hero, The Terminator, Sarah Connor, just some like lady, just some woman gets pulled in and has to defeat this highly sophisticated killing machine from the future. Stand by Me, just a bunch of kids. But and then maybe that's why it was so endearing, because I think that they really played on the heartstrings of like the everyday person or the common man, and like the angsty movies, Breakfast Club, Pretty in Pink, where like they played on the heartstrings of just like the nerdy, not popular high school kids that
Right.
made them stars.
I feel like some of those are like some of the first like period pieces where it's like they were doing it in the moment, you know, like a lot of the like those types of movies before, you know, they were playing people in the past, you know what I mean? Versus, you know, like The Breakfast Club, it's like a movie about, you know, young people in the moment.
Right.
And, you know, like I feel like that was the first time that was done. Well, maybe not the first time it was done, but it was the first time it was like, you know, a widely viewed thing, you know?
Right. Right.
Yeah,
And
the 80s was sick.
a lot of credit has to go to so John Hughes.
Mhm.
A lot of credit to John Hughes, and his like he kind of ranged into the, obviously we grew up with like Home Alone,
Right.
like those movies, the Beethoven movies. Those were the 90s. Like I think Home Alone was 1990. But like 16 Candles, Breakfast Club, Pretty in Pink, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, Weird Science, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, The Great Outdoors, National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. Like he had a hand in all of those,
Yeah.
and like so, I think I obviously he needs to get a ton of credit for how like how endeared that generation is, that decade is.
Yeah.
Of course, like the comedy actors like Bill Murray, Steve Martin, John Candy, all those guys. Um, they have to get a lot of that too.
Yeah, John Hughes was like the 80s and early 90s version of like the Farrelly brothers in like the mid
Oh
90s, early
yeah,
2000s, you know, because if you look at like their lineup of like obviously the Farrelly brothers, it was all comedies, but if you look at like their lineup of movies, it's kind of the same where like you look at the list and you're like, holy shit, I didn't realize like every single one of those movies was by them, you know? Like they
right,
just had like hit after hit after hit, which is what John Hughes had like 10 years prior, you know what I mean?
right. The brothers, and I think the Farrelly brothers all had to have like at least one or two gross out moments in their movies.
Right.
Like I think of
Something about Mary where he's
yeah,
in the thing.
that like zipped his Frankenbeans up in his jeans. But then
Yep.
there's also like uh, God, who is the actor? The one that plays like her old obsessed boyfriend. That's
Oh,
like
Woogie,
Woogie that has like
the
boils.
things all over his face. Yeah. Elliot, something Elliot.
Sam Elliott. No, 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 not Sam Elliott.
No, no, not Sam Elliott.
Sam
Chris
Elliott.
Elliott. Chris Elliott.
Yeah, Sam Elliott. I
That would
couldn't.
that would have been a weird casting choice.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think. Yeah, I don't think if it was Sam Elliott, I don't think Mary ever would have broken up with him,
No.
because look at him. Yeah,
Well,
who would
not
give that hunk up?
right. What would Sam Elliott look like without his mustache, though? You know, would he be as much of a hunk? I mean, he still has the deep
Yes.
voice, but like he might look weird. Like, have you seen Chuck Norris without his beard?
Yeah, yeah.
Dude, he shaved his beard off like 5 or 6 years ago and aged like 70 years. Like literally, he looks like a withered up old man without his beard, which shows like the power of beards, man, to like
Yeah, yeah.
hide how old you are.
So I want to report back on Sam Elliott without facial hair, and Young Sam Elliott without facial hair, just devastatingly handsome.
Really?
Yeah.
All right, I
Old
gotta look this up.
old old Sam Elliott without facial hair. Who's that old crazy man?
Weird looking?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. See what I tell you.
Mhm.
You know who's low key a hunk? Holy crap! Yeah, man, young Sam Elliott. Wow. You know who's low key a big time hunk that like I'm just realizing it now? Billy Bob Thornton. Man,
Oh
that
yeah.
guy. As far as like actors go, that guy's dude. He's insane. We watched season. Have you seen Fargo, the show?
No, I haven't.
Dude, season one of Fargo, he plays like this deranged killer. And
Okay.
oh my God, dude, that guy for being like not a muscle dude, which think if you think about the 80s, like all the masculine guys were all these like big beefed out muscle guys like Stallone and Schwarzenegger and stuff. For being just like a normal body type looking old guy, like no one's more masculine than Billy Bob Thornton, man.
Oh yeah.
And him being able to pull off the whole Angelina Jolie thing in the 90s, like how the hell?
Well, that was
He just looked super trashy, but if you like watch his catalog, like he's a dynamite actor, dude.
right, right. Well, I think he. I mean, with the Angelina Jolie, I think about like they had apparently vials of each other's blood, like as necklaces.
Weird.
Yeah, so super weird.
Little
But I think
weird. Yeah.
the I think it's the confidence, but then I also think it's the why he evaded like hunk confirmation here and there. It's the choice of the mustache with the little patch of stuff.
Yeah.
Because again, it goes back to facial hair choice. And he's a skinny dude, and then when he has that and he has the mustache and like the little like patch of
Right.
hair underneath his bottom lip, like he looks just kind of nerdy, lanky, bratty, but yeah, he's a handsome man, great actor.
Yeah, I'm watching him in Fargo and I'm like, dude, this guy. At first he has this like weird haircut where he's got like bangs that come down and they like cut off here. He almost looks like the Dumb and Dumber guy, like Lloyd Christmas. But then
Okay.
later on in the season, he's like trying to play this other dude and he gets like a new haircut. And I'm like, dude, that guy devilishly handsome. Like literally devilishly, the descriptor word, like
Yeah.
that describes that dude to a T.
Okay. I see what you're saying.
Yeah. Like later on in that season, dude, I'm like, man, this guy, I don't
Yeah.
know.
Just rocking the bangs for sure.
Yeah, the bang look was not good. But
No.
then later on, he like plays a dentist. He's trying to like he's a hitman essentially. So he's like infiltrating this other dental guy's practice to try to find some witness protection person.
Sure.
Anyway, don't want to ruin the whole thing, but
Man, look at that. I mean, so you have him, you have Colin Hanks, you
yeah,
have Martin Freeman.
yeah, man.
Damn, that's a cast.
And the cool thing about that show is every season you have a new cast, and it's
Okay.
all like really good. Like season two, I think. God, who was in like season three was Ewan McGregor was in it. Season two had the dude from what the hell is that show? Um, Burn Notice. Remember that guy?
Okay. Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and it had
The the spy from Burn Notice,
right.
Michael.
Yeah, the Burn Notice guy. It
Michael
also
Weston.
right. It also had Ted Danson was in season two.
Yeah, yeah. All right.
Talk about hunks, dude. Ted Danson, that guy, man. And he started. See, these are all guys that like. Did Thornton start in the '80s? Like when was Sling Blade? That was '90s,
That
right?
was 90s. Yeah.
But like Ted Danson, talk about like hunks of the '80s, dude. Cheers. Have you went back and watched Cheers?
Here and there. Yeah.
Dude, it's funny as hell. What the hell, man? Like growing up, that was always on. And I remember being a little kid and being like, because you're a little kid.
Yeah.
But
Right.
going back and watching it, I'm like, man, What a great show. Speaking of the 80s, yeah. Roseanne. How about Roseanne? That was a good show.
Oh yeah.
You know who's a writer on Roseanne? Who's like my favorite comedian ever, and is the most hilarious person in the history of ever?
Who's that?
Norm Macdonald.
Yes. Yes.
Dude, he
God,
is
he's a weird man.
so funny.
But he's like, so Norm Macdonald is, I think he's kind of crazy. He's absolutely crazy. But he's like, I think the comedian's favorite comedian.
Oh yeah.
I think I don't think there's anything he does that isn't trying to like with somebody.
Well,
And
that's
like,
the thing. I think like he's low key like a genius. Like I think he's not. I don't think he is crazy. I think he's just always with people. You know what I mean? Because there's been like, so I'm like biggest fan of this guy, and I've listened to like all these podcast interviews with him. But like if you listen to like the one with Mark Maron, it's like one of the only times he's ever like come across like serious. And it's like you're like, dude, this guy is so smart. Like he's just killer smart. And he reads like Tolstoy and like all this like old like philosophical literature.
Sure.
And he knows all of these things, but I think like he's always just kind of like trying to get laughs, you know? So he's
Right.
always messing with people. Do you know that Norm Macdonald's brother is like the Anderson Cooper of Canada?
No, I didn't know that.
Do you know that? He's like the Tom Brokaw of Canada. He's like Canadian News Network, like top anchor. It's insane.
His brother Neil
Neil Macdonald.
Neil Macdonald.
Yeah.
I suppose that makes sense if Norm is so like kind of so well read, so smart, like low key smart in what he's doing. Those Canadians. A lot of so the 80s also like a lot of I think Chicago humor and Canadian humor.
Yeah. Chicago for sure, man. The 80s was like Chicago's decade, man.
Definitely. God, what was the Second City? So
Yep.
Second City, Chicago. I mean, and I didn't, this is just off the cuff, but like, I think Dan Aykroyd, Bill Murray, John Candy, I think Chris Farley even.
Yeah,
Oh, God.
he did. Chris Farley died in Chicago. But Chris Farley's a Midwestern dude, man.
Yeah, he is. Well, was born in Wisconsin, went to Madison. Oh God, now I'm looking up Second City alumni.
Dude, there's so many. You're gonna get like, there's people you wouldn't even think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's so many. Like, I just know from listening to Mark Maron, his podcast.
Yeah,
it's like half the funny people started there.
Right.
You know?
Fred Willard, Harold Ramis, John Belushi, Gilda Radner, Dan Aykroyd, Bill Murray, Eugene Levy. God, all these guys. Rick Moranis. Shout out to Rick Moranis.
Dude, Rick Moranis.
God damn it.
It's crazy that guy died. Speaking of Billy Bob Thornton, Rick Moranis, his last. Wait, who am I thinking of? I'm not thinking of Rick Moranis. Who's the guy? John Ritter is who I'm thinking of. I don't know why John Ritter and Rick Moranis kind of they look a little bit alike. But never mind. What happened to Rick Moranis?
Is
he alive?
He's alive, but I think he gave up acting. I think he had I don't know if he had a sick kid or if there was something going on where he just gave up acting just to be with his family. And I think so, like, I think there's a lot of respect for him out there for it. And obviously, like, we all want him back. We all want to see him in a movie again because, we remember how, like, his character made us feel in, like, Ghostbusters or Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
Right.
But I think, so I think, I think he just gave it up because he made the decision to spend time with his family.
He pulled a Robert Smith and retired early.
Yeah, he just pulled a Robert Smith. There was also like, so he was apparently attacked recently, and I forgot about this, but I pulled up Rick Moranis, man arrested in New York City attack on actor Rick Moranis.
Was that the Central Park thing, right? He got like punched in the face or something?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, yeah. Who does who? Why would you attack Rick
Why?
Moranis? I don't know.
What was the motive? Does it ever say?
Maybe he yelled "come back to acting" and punched him in the face. I don't know.
Huh.
Or like he got mad because that one time he, instead of shrinking his kid, he blew up his kid, and this kid like just caused so much damage.
Was it his kid? He's like, you totally screwed my career.
Stop shrinking and blowing me up, Dad.
You made me too big.
Yeah, I'm way too big. Everyone's afraid of me, and I'm only a baby.
Yeah, they can't fit me in the screen anymore. So I missed all my roles.
Exactly. Ah, okay. Rick Moranis stopped acting to take care of his kids after he lost his wife in '91.
Man,
So, yeah. So
isn't that crazy?
yeah, absolutely.
That's admirable because you think like most like actor dudes would just pay somebody to take care of his kids and not be involved in their life, you know?
Right. Well, and that, I guess that, yeah, that just kind of emphasizes the fact that that's just a job. So like, but a job that pays well, and hopefully he's, you know, set up. But like acting, musicians, like that's just a job like anything else. And something comes up, you know, people can just not feel it anymore, or, you know, realize that they have, you know, other more important things to do. And he had that realization.
I think that's like an ego thing though, you know? Like to pull a Rick Moranis, you have to have no ego. Like I feel like it's not just a job for a lot of people, you know, because part of it is like being popular and always staying in the spotlight, and people like think that if they, you know, aren't acting they'll fade away, whereas like a guy like Rick Moranis, like he's earned enough off of like residuals, and like, you know, he's in all these timeless movies. Like you could just chill and make money the rest of your life, which, you know, some people do that. Like think about like, does Nicolas Cage, like he's barely in anything anymore, you know?
Nothing that anybody would see. Like,
Yeah.
I think he's still in like super hyper weird things.
But I think like he's doing it on his own terms. You know what I mean?
Right. And I think that's, so like listening to like Mark Maron, like some of those actors that he talks about that aren't really doing anything anymore, like really like the goal was to get to the point where they can just do whatever they want on their own terms.
Right.
And I think that that's kind of like that's low key the goal of life. Like get to a point where you're comfortable enough to where however you make money, however you survive is the thing that you just would do even if you weren't making money.
Right.
Like everything on your own terms.
Do you think like Drew Carey is living on his own terms by hosting The Price is Right? Like to me, that just seems like such a
I don't know.
poor job for somebody like him who had like a funny show, you know?
Yeah.
And now he's just a guy that talks.
Or it's just like, yeah, I'm just gonna punch in and punch out, not think about it, and cash the check.
Right. Like, yeah, that to me that seems so Drew Carey like. Like that would be something that what's his face from Fresh Prince would do, like he's doing with AFV, you know?
Carlton?
Yeah. Like Carlton's not the type of dude that has like, you know, star power to do like a Drew Carey show. But like I could see him like hosting a game show.
Alfonso Ribeiro.
Yeah. That's his name?
Yeah.
Golly, dude, why wasn't that guy with a name like that? That dude should have been way cooler. Alfonso Ribeiro?
Like he should have just cut it out and gone by just Alfonso.
I know like Fresh Prince, like he did it like and created this role, but like by being this like nerdy dork, like I feel like he cost himself like other opportunities down the road because nobody wants him for other stuff now.
Completely like pigeonholed because
like Screech doesn't, he doesn't do anymore, and it's because
other than
he wants Screech to be your leading man, other than get arrested and do like porno videos and
like
celebrity death match or whatever.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a case of being a gimmick actor, and then what do you do when when no one's interested in that anymore?
Right.
What about who's the actor? Steve Urkel,
Yeah, Jameel White
Jameel White.
or
Okay,
Jaleel, right? Jameel.
yeah.
He's got to be hosting something now, isn't he? A game show. All
God, I
these
would hope
guys are
so.
hosting game shows.
Total blackout. Oh, that was only until 13.
Yeah, but think about that. Like that perfect game show host is the dude that everybody knows, but like nobody wants him to act anymore. Like it's just a
Right.
name, you
Right.
know? Like
Like,
hosted by Jaleel White.
and then he has to, like, God, that would kill him. Like, he would have to do like some catchphrases during the show too.
Right.
That's what the people want. That's
Everybody's just on pins and needles waiting for him to be like, "Did I do that?"
oh my God. Yeah, talk about how like a terrible thing for the rest of your life.
Who
Uh,
started the catchphrase in the sitcom? Was it "I Love Lucy"? Remember, she always had that catchphrase. What the hell was it? But
well,
before that, I feel like that wasn't a thing, was it?
oh, the honeymooners, like to the moon, like what Ralph Cramden talked about beating his wife, and that was like a catchphrase. Uh, the times have changed.
Yeah,
Thank God.
for sure.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know when the start of the catchphrase was. Definitely in the television era, in the regular
Right.
television era. Um, but you think so? I mean, you're talking about Drew Carey doing The Price is Right. Do you think all of the hosts of Masked Singer, Masked Dancer, uh, I Can See Your Voice? Do you think all those people are fulfilled and happy with what they're doing?
I maybe. I don't know. It kind of depends on like how those people see themselves. You know what I mean? Like if they
Sure.
see themselves as a serious actor, no, you know. But like those gigs have to pay pretty well. So you
Yeah.
know, if you're a guy like Jameel White, and you haven't had a role in 20 years, and now they want you to host some show for millions of dollars, like I'd be pretty stoked with that.
I
But
suppose.
yeah, but if you're a guy like like Drew Carey, who I feel like could do other things. Like I feel like he would have he could do other shows. He could act. He was funny. And he was a good
Right.
writer. Like I just feel like there's so much more that guy could do. You know, he
Right.
he could host a late night show. Honestly, like he could be Jimmy Kimmel someday.
But he was like, so the
Think
way I
about
see,
his sidekick hosted one. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Yeah. Go ahead.
like the way I see his, well, yeah, Colin Ferguson, he was on the Drew Carey show, I believe.
Yeah, Ferguson.
Uh,
Yeah, Colin.
but
Isn't it something else? It's something like that. It's
I'm,
Ferguson though.
I'm probably wrong. Who knows?
The last name's right.
Right. But the way I see, God, no, he's from
Craig.
Cleveland. The way I see Craig Ferguson, you're right. Um, I was thinking about Colin from Whose Line Is It Anyway?
Oh,
Um,
sure.
the way I see Jim Carrey is a less funny Norm Macdonald, almost a less funny and less offensive Norm Macdonald. Because like they say, they both kind of have the same delivery of like, like kind of like not really fully confident in what they're saying,
Yeah.
but with like Norm Macdonald, he's just like they kind of hedge their talk, their speaking. It's not really like a full. You never feel like they're speaking directly at or about something, but then it's just like the punchline comes in like the throwaway lines at the end. Whereas like I think Norm Macdonald like actually like cuts into like a deeper truth and like cuts into something, where Drew Carey is just kind of like he kind of like falls off of his jokes, and he kind of like, so I see him as like a less confident Norm Macdonald.
He's
Uh,
kind of an aw shucks character.
yeah, yeah. Like maybe the Drew Carey show was the highlight, and that's kind of all he had. What if he doesn't have any more funny?
The Drew Carey show is hilarious. He's got to have, if you can write episode after episode after episode of like a comedy show, he could at least, maybe he's not like the guy who acts in them, but I feel like he could at least create a show. Like, you know, like
Right.
who's the guy who created the Goldbergs, right? Isn't he an actor? But he doesn't star in that, right? Or no, am I thinking of somebody else?
Uh, Adam Goldberg. Well, he's the program creator. Patton Oswalt narrates it.
Right. I think I'm thinking of a different, there's two Adam Goldbergs, I feel like.
Okay. Are you thinking about Goldberg the wrestler?
No, there's another Adam Goldberg who's like the Hebrew Hammer. Remember the Hebrew Hammer?
Yeah.
That guy's named Adam Goldberg too. But I think the Goldberg from the Goldbergs is just like some behind the scenes guy. But I know there's been guys that have like been the showrunner but haven't been in the show type of a thing where like it's a show from, you know, like didn't Louis C.K. do that? Baskets. That was Louis C.K.
That was Yeah, that was Baskets.
Yeah. So I mean, like Drew Carey, I feel like could be the guy who like creates a show, writes the show, has a funny guy acting in it. Like he just seems like, I don't know, man. Maybe I'm just thinking more highly of Drew Carey than he thinks of himself. But like the Drew Carey show was like very funny, you know.
Yeah.
And then he like you would think that after somebody has a very funny show, that you know there's good things on the horizon for the guy, and then he like disappears and comes back and hosts The Price is Right. It's like what the hell's going on with this guy? You know what I mean? It's like if Jim Carrey did The Mask and then he disappeared for 10 years and then popped up, you know, hosting you know, The Masked Singer or something. Like what?
Dancing with the Stars or
Yeah,
something.
like where the hell did what happened to that guy?
Right,
You know?
right. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's his like version of retirement.
I guess.
Drew
Speaking
Carey.
of masked things, how like viewer hungry are networks? Like, have you noticed that like if one
Oh,
thing works, they try to spin it off like 1,000 times, like Chicago Fire, Chicago, you know, Vice, Chicago EMT, Chicago PD.
right, right.
Like what? And then they had the Masked Singer. Now they have the Masked Dancer. How the
Yeah,
hell are you supposed to know who the dancer is? Like you can't hear what they're saying,
right.
and they're in a costume. To me, that's like the dumbest show I've ever heard of. The
Yeah.
Masked Dancer. How are you ever gonna guess?
Well, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how it works. And it's certainly like you see all these promos during football games.
Yeah.
Like the majority of time when we are watching Fox.
Yeah. Where do those Venn diagrams intersect? Like
Yeah.
football fans and people that are gonna watch the Masked Dancer. I don't think that's the same. That's not the same audience.
Well, it's people seeking just mindless television watching.
I suppose.
But yeah, it's kind of it's crazy. It's capitalism and filling up time slots, and we got to have a show for this. But yeah, they try to definitely milk every certain idea and angle. Like we probably saw success from the Masked Singer because we love ourselves some singing shows.
Yeah.
But yeah, but then that branched into the Masked Dancer, and then like the I Can See Your Voice, like a lip syncing thing, and I think they have to guess as if that's like their voice or not. Then there's a talent show now where I just saw a promo for it. I don't know what it's called, but it's like they interview a person and then they have to guess what their talent is. Show us your talent, I think is what it's called. But during football games, it's like you see all of these promos and then they're all the same. And then it's The Bachelor or The Bachelorette, The Bachelor in this, then it's whatever Romance Island, I don't know. But it's I don't know how it makes you feel. Yeah, I don't know how it makes you feel about us and the current state of society that these are the things that we're trying to fill up our minds with.
Right.
Ugh. Yeah, so I haven't watched any of those.
Yeah, I haven't either. I would watch The Masked Singer because I feel like that's kind of intriguing, but anything else, like I'm not into, especially like The Bachelor, The Bachelorette, like mean, come on, dude. Like, who gives a shit? Number one. Number two, like, these people never stay together. So what's the
Right.
point? You know, like, what's the point of watching it? Like, it's just so stupid. It's such a, I don't know.
I think we're very, very hungry to fill up the time gaps in our lives. No matter how busy we are, that little extra time that we could actually sit and think and reflect and like expand ourselves and broaden ourselves are when we just don't want to. We just don't want to. Just want to sit there, look at it, stare at a box. And I get it. I get like that too.
People need a break. Is part
Right.
of it. You know, like, good God, man, this life with our society, especially right now. I mean, holy smokes. I feel like this whole like changing presidents thing right now too is like, I'm so over it. Like, I'm just ready for it to be done, and like hopefully Biden doesn't talk as much as the last president, and then I don't have to hear about him, because like the whole politics thing, I mean, Jesus Christ, man, people are like ready to beat the living hell out of each other over, a lot of it's over like issues that don't even affect them, you know?
Right.
Like, I
Right.
don't understand why we can't just like work together.
But yeah, I don't remember, and maybe it was because we were young, but I don't remember seeing as much like political content on like media on anything like when we were younger.
No, not at all.
You rarely heard from the president, and you would hear, I mean, news stories like the United States signs this or this bill passes or whatever every once in a while, but you'd rarely hear from the president. You'd rarely see the president. And I think like when Obama started like tweeting or something like that, that was like the first White House that like tried to speak more directly to the people. And I don't know if that was like a great thing or not, but yeah, now it's like politics has turned into, it's turned into football. I mean, it's turned into competitive sports, and it's turned into like WWF in terms of how like engaged people feel like they have to be, even when like something doesn't affect them. But and I can understand if it's like fighting for kind of like fighting against like the gigantic like slew of misinformation, trying to correct people, trying to like research, trying to make sure that we're actually discussing things with the same set of information. But now it's like we're willing to fight and kill each other over every tiny little issue and thing that happened.
Right.
Like the president golfed today. You know, he didn't golf today. Like, it's like, come on.
Yeah. And the other thing is too, is like, what's the end game? Like, if this is like this big competitive sport, your side wins, then what? Like, I don't think anybody like is thinking about like, okay, your side wins, so the other half of the population, you know, like, they're screwed. Like, I just don't understand. Like, why can't we just work together? And it's funny, like, there's these narratives, but then you look at like, what's the substance of the narratives? Like, a lot of it, like, there's the same goal, you know?
Right.
Whereas like,
Oh, absolutely.
we could like work together and make things better, but like both sides are like, well, it's only this is the only way to remedy this. And it's like, what happened to cooperating, you know?
Right.
Like, I admire like a lot of these like old school politicians more than I ever would before, because they knew how to play politics and like how to negotiate, you know? I mean, right now it's like there's no negotiation going on, and people are just talking shit about each other to the public. And then the public hates each side hates each other, where it's like, you know, then there's like some of us that are in the middle that I'm like, I definitely skew one way, but I'm also sitting here looking and being like, dude, none of this is productive, you know? Like, if I owned a company and I had two sides that were like fighting like that, I would like fire everyone.
Right.
It'd be like, dude, we can't, this is like a hostile work environment. Like, we can't get anything done this way. Like, we need new people. Sorry.
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, the U.S. is definitely a hostile work environment right now.
Yeah.
And we 1,000,000% all want, like, deep down the same things.
Right.
Want the same things, but we're fighting over who the messenger of that thing is, and we're fighting over who comes up with the idea of that thing that we all want. But like, it's like really, what is the end goal? And what is the end goal? I mean, the goal at a certain level is separation, because obviously if we're fighting amongst each other, there's less of us actually trying to actively create change in the world for the better of the majority of people. So
Mhm.
then the powerful can kind of do what they will with little resistance.
Sure.
But even that, like, what is the end goal of that? Because at the end of the day, you can spend your life collecting power and money and everything, but then you die and then that's gone. So it's like, I struggle with that. Like, what is the end
Okay.
goal of that? What is the end goal? My overarching goal, or what I think the goal should be, is, we have this limited time that we're here. We have this very limited time that we're here.
Mhm.
And, obviously you want life to be better for your children and the next generations when you move on. But you should also, like, the goal should be, let's make this whole thing easier.
Right.
Yes, we want people working. Yes, we want people productive. Yes, we have this little kernel of things in the back of our mind saying that like, well, if that person's not working, why should they get benefits of certain things? But like, really, like, we have the technology and the knowledge and the knowledge from history that we should really just try to make this whole life thing easier for everybody. That should be
Right.
the goal. What the hell are we doing? And I fall down those rabbit holes quite a bit, and think about it a lot. But yes, I don't know that, and that's what gets me on the train of thought of, like, I don't know that, like, we've morally evolved that much in the last, like, 1,000 years, because like that hasn't really been the overarching goal. And it's tough now because there's really nothing. We have everything we need is here. Like, we have everything we need,
Yeah.
and people are really just fighting for a place of relevance, and fighting to be heard, fighting to be represented, fighting, to feel like they're a part of everything. But as a human population, everything that we need to be happy and free and successful exists in the world right now.
Yeah. It's just
Uh,
not concentrated the way it should be. You know what I
right,
mean?
right,
That's
right.
really the biggest problem is yeah, man. Which sucks because, like, if you think of like the 80s, I think part of the reason that's so nostalgic for especially like older people, is because the world wasn't like that then. There was no 24-hour news media cycle where, there's all these stories. There's no social media where, all this like misinformation is getting spread so quickly, person to person, and people are like hunkering down in these opinions. And like back in the day, it was funny too. You could like kind of see the themes, like all of the old school 80s movies, like so many of them, the villain is like Russian, you know,
Right.
like, and everybody united in this like hate for Russia, apparently. Um, and like now, yeah, I don't know, man. Like, it's just everything's become 300 times more complicated than it needs to be, I feel like. And like, people just
Mhm.
need to be kind to each other, and we need
Right.
to like listen to each other. People don't listen enough. People don't listen at all, honestly. I mean, people just like, it's like the laziest form of having an opinion. People just like share memes. And then if you ever like go out to a bar and like get into an argument with somebody about something, like they their pants. They don't know what to do. They're trying to like recite like things they saw in memes, and it's just like, dude, you have no logic here, man. You're not, you haven't thought this out to like where it's a concept that, because a lot of like life in anything really, I mean, you want to have this base understanding of a concept and you can apply it to all these different things. Well, everything's just so like scattershot, like one example of this, one example of that. And everybody, the other thing too is like everybody's so like focused on like blaming other people instead of like, okay, well then how do we make this better? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
people don't have
Absolutely.
an idea for that, but everybody will say, well, here's why it happened. Well, how do we fix that? You know what I mean? Like,
Right. Right. Uh, Absolutely. I catch myself doing that too, where I'll just have like a vent, and then after that, like, maybe I'll feel a little bit relieved that I just vented all these feelings out.
Yeah.
But maybe it would have been better served if I would have just written it in like a journal or something like that. Because
Right.
afterwards, I'm like, well, how do we fix that?
Yeah.
Or how
What
do
now?
we,
You know what I mean?
what's the action step to move forward?
Right.
And there's really not that. Like I had one of those where I shared something and then someone had a bad thing to say about it, or they were they put up, they didn't really put an argument out, but they just kind of like in a comment like poo-pooed what I said. And then it was like, all right, well, do you have something to add here, or are you just aping some other talking point that we already discussed? And then their thing to add was like an article from like freedom guerrilla US America dot Trump. And it was like, okay, is that an argument, or are we just sharing articles back and forth now?
Right.
Like, what are you saying? So that's we definitely reverted back into grade schoolers. Like, we're at the level of debate is grade school now.
Right.
Like, you stink. Well, your breath stinks. Well, your dad's breath stinks. Like, it's like my dad could beat up your dad. Like, it's, oh my God, what happened to us? There's no self-reflection. That's a good I guess that's a good development over the past year with me. Is someone says, I'll still like post, and if not think in the moment, I'm tired, I'll like kind of get into a fight that I don't really care to be in. But now it's like somebody says something and it makes me upset. The first reaction shouldn't be to like toss it back in their face. It should be, well, why am I upset? Why does this make me upset? And then you have to reflect on that a little bit. And then after a little while, most of the time, you kind of realize why something made you upset, and realize that it's not, the next move isn't to throw an argument back at their face that is going to lead to another argument. It's just kind of, well, reflect on that vein of like, why am I upset about this statement? And then seek the answer, and then seek the next steps to move forward from it, instead of just like throwing mud in each other's eyes.
Right. I mean, part of being like an adult is taking the high road. You know what I mean? And I've
Yeah, it sucks.
that's one of the things that though, like I would say, you know, being in corporate America for as long as I did, like one of the more positive things that I learned, especially with like my last role, I was like a communications like head of like a, you know, a company that had like hundreds of locations,
Mm-hmm.
was just like thinking meticulously about what is and isn't worth saying. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like I had to do that not just for me, but I had like a team of people where I'm like, you know, if somebody clapped back at some like franchisee who's being rude with like a rude response, you know, I'd go and talk to them and be like, look, you know, we all agree that that person was out of line and rude, and you know, but sometimes you just need to you know, be careful about what you say, because clapping back with some, you know, response isn't going to make things better. I mean, think about what makes things better. Is you trying to prove them wrong make anything better? No, because they're not going to listen to you if you approach them with that angle, you know?
Right.
I mean, I would say like some of the best ways to like change someone's mind about something is like they come with some sort of response, and then you ask them to explain further.
Right.
And they explain further, and you know, you say, that's interesting. What do you think about this then? And then you just get them talking. It's almost like a listening technique. But then, you know, 5, 6, 7, 8 posts down the road, you can be like, well, you know, I think about it this way, but you know, I kind of see where you're coming from. And then you leave the conversation like, I don't know, amicably. And I feel
Right.
like that almost like makes people that are like that feel worse about being like that, because they're like, I just, you know, shat on some nice person who like wasn't out for blood like me, and now like what am I doing? You know what I mean?
You're right. Right. You'd hope. You'd hope. but then like the self-reflection and like that might not exist in some people anymore. But I guess what you can do your best to try to chip away at that.
Yeah, like
And
get them,
ultimately, yeah,
like make them self-reflect by the questions you ask. You know what I mean? Like
right,
that was a big managerial technique of mine back in the day too, where it'd be like, I'm trying to help you get to this point. Like I could come and I could tell somebody like, here's where you're wrong, here's what you should do. But it's a lot better if you can like ask questions and have a conversation to have them arrive at that point themselves, because then they've had to think it through. And by the time they come up with the answer, it's like they know the why behind it. And it's not just somebody like, acting like a parent and scolding them and.
right, yeah, it's tough. It's a tough road to take, and I know it's hard for people when it feels like all you're doing is trying to have conversations with 50 people a day that are all coming at you like that. I think it's exhausting. It's tiring. But there's really nothing's going to change unless we're willing to do that at all.
Sure. Yeah, and it's like emotional intelligence. Learn how to control your emotions. Like there's a time to vent, and you vent in a safe space with people you trust, and and then there's the time to just kind of ask yourself, is it worth it to post that thing that's going to make you look like an idiot too?
Right.
Like sometimes it's like there's somebody acting like an idiot, and then you want to like point it out and be like, hey, you're an idiot. But like they're already doing that, man. Like
Right.
Let them be an idiot. Like everybody else already thinks that. They don't need to say that. You know what I mean?
Right. That thing that like might for a moment make you feel a little bit of relief, but then you feel like garbage afterwards.
Like glad I called that person out.
I got him.
Tell everyone that they're an idiot. Where it's like,
honey, come look at this.
Knows that now you look like a dick too.
Yes.
Oh man, this has been a good one. I feel like it went off the rails a little bit, but that's how podcasts go, huh?
That's perfect. Absolutely. Yeah, I think so. My very briefly, I guess my hunk of the week is John Hughes.
Yeah.
That's it.
I'm gonna say Billy Bob Thornton, man.
I think I felt you're leaning that way.
Dude, I hunked out on him. Also, what's his face from Honey, I Shrunk the Kids? Why can't I think?
Rick Moranis.
Rick Moranis, dude. What a hunky thing that is to like step away from like a career in Hollywood to like take care of your family. Like that is as hunky as they come, man. Because so many people have had stuff like that happen, and then they just pay it away. You know what I mean? Like they hire a nanny, and they're disconnected from their kids, and then they grow up to be like Jaden Smith or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe he's doing better, but anyway, like to see someone choose being a dad to their children over being a famous actor at the height of their career is like, dude, that takes some balls, man.
Absolutely. So he gets it from both of us.
Yeah. That dude's a hunk.
Absolutely.
Sure. All right, man. Well, that was some good combo. Until next time.
See you later.
Later.